everybody. Welcome back to Lockbox Lunatics podcast with Chad there in Arizona. Hi, Chad.
Hello,
Welcome.
everybody. I got to
And
get my hand in
Steve
the
up
race.
here in Kennewick, Washington, the dry side of Washington State. So, welcome back to another episode. We kind of have some random things to cover, but we're excited because today we are celebrating the birthday of our country. Happy 4th of July to everybody. Hope you're having a safe 4th of July. Don't hurt yourself. Be safe and sane with whatever way you choose.
Right. Make sure you have all five, well, 10 digits when you're done, if not
Chad needs
more.
a cup of coffee because he's only counting 5 initial digits. That's okay.
That's all
He'll
right.
have. So hey, Chad. So how are you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty good. And how are you doing? Just getting ready for the 4th of July.
Heck yeah, heck yeah. It's it's a busy week up here. I was we celebrate pretty intensely up here. The skies light up and go crazy. Maybe we'll
Mhm.
get some pictures from our respective areas and we'll throw them up on next week's
Oh, there we
podcast so
go.
people can see kind of how they celebrate. And hey, if for those of you that are following along or whatever, comment on how you guys like to celebrate. How do you celebrate the 4th and what some of your favorite things are? And and throw us suggestions as well on things you want us to talk about since we kind of cover a myriad of topics. It
Right,
seems like
right.
we cover a lot, but there's so much happening in the real estate industry right now. It's kind of wild, man. You've got what Compass is suing Zillow now.
Oh,
Zillow's
yeah.
fighting back on what they're doing. I personally think that's quite fascinating. You know my stance on that. I think that's a little bit of the pot calling the kettle black or vice versa because Compass is saying, "Hey, we're going to keep all our listings to ourselves, so you have to come and work through us." And then they're PO'd that Zillow's not going to actually go ahead and market those. And Zillow's going, "Well, they're saying you have to market them." And Zillow's like, "No, we don't." Anyways, very fascinating.
It is.
My personal, very unprofessional and no legal knowledge background thinks that if that ever does make it to court, the judge will probably just laugh. Go ahead and flame me down below. Add
You
comments.
know,
Tell me
the
how
courts have
idiotic I
the
am.
courts have done crazier things, have they not, though?
They have exactly.
Yeah,
No,
and
and
so it'll be interesting the argument that's put together. My son Cody was in debate, right? In high school, and I saw so many debates where some of the craziest arguments were coming out of these kids' mouths, right?
yeah,
And it was simply due to the fact that they just had to make an argument, and so they just, would grasp at anything. Well, if you think about it, that's what these attorneys are hired to do.
that you're right. You're
They're
right.
being
They
they're
are
being paid to
professional debaters.
Yep, they're being paid to find some logic or some flaw in a logic that they'll impose on the other party, and then that's going to be the basis of their lawsuit. And we'll see how good of an argument they're able to make, and how good of an argument the judge is going to require to be made. Because that lawsuit in Missouri, the judge wouldn't allow some
Oh,
arguments to be made. They wouldn't allow some evidence to be presented. So
yep.
that kind of skewed the verdict, if you will.
Oh, it did 100%. And
Oh
that is
yeah,
the most anti-consumer, by the way, for consumers that I highly encourage you to look into that lawsuit because it's probably the least consumer-friendly lawsuit or
oh
class
definitely.
action that has happened in practically my lifetime that I've seen. This has been absolutely one of the worst outcomes for buyers in terms of representation within the marketplace, created the most amount of confusion. And
It
I've
did.
seen more quote unquote Wild West deals going on in the real estate industry than I've ever seen in my entire career.
Right.
It's fascinating to me. And so, anyways, I encourage our listeners to go out there to check into that lawsuit because you're spot on with that right there. That was a terrible one. You said something about logic being flawed. I remember it brings back when I was in college and I was in a philosophy class. And I like to wax poetic, as those of you that know me might know. I kind of go on tangents and made an argument, and the professor's comment on my paper was, "Your logic is flawed," and I'll never forget that. And I kind of took that with a little badge of pride, actually, because I figured I don't know how I got that comment or where that came from exactly, or,
Right.
or what part of my argument made him say that, or if it was the argument in its entirety, or how I was just approaching it. But I have probably a little bit of a different approach on a lot of different things. Hey,
Well, the joke in the debate club, when my son was going through, is that everything escalates to the annihilation of mankind. So if you do this, the ultimately result is going to be the annihilation of mankind, and that was whenever you knew that you had the other party on the ropes is when they went back to that final argument in the debate, you
Oh
know.
yeah. No, I did debate for a little while and I used to love that. I knew I was in the win column when they started going to a complete emotional plea. They abandoned all their stats, facts, and figures
Yep.
and went to the emotional tugging at the heartstrings. I was like, done. I won because now we're throwing data, logic out the windows and it's like, well, how does this make you feel? And which, I'm not denying the importance of feelings. I understand that. But in the
I
absence
have some sometimes.
you do occasionally, but
On occasion, I have a feeling.
in the
Yeah,
absence of data though and logic and all the other things, feelings can be really misinterpreted. So,
they
hey,
can.
you know
They
what I
can.
wanted to talk about today? I wanted to give a little exit plug. I'm going to give a little exit plug right
Okay.
now, which I
Do
know we
it.
do that from time to time. I got an email this week from a company called the Yard Signs Leads,
Oh,
yardsignsleads.com. And they said, "Hello, Stephen." That was nice. First name in the MailChimp. They did the first name. If you have
right.
current listings with plain signs in front of them, that's a problem. You need smarter signs. And I was like, oh, really? Tell me more. So I click on their little thing. Did you know that agents who give people a way to get the price picks and info about a home via an SMS text sign get 4 times the number of leads from them? And I thought, well, yeah, we know this within Exit because we have my smart sign technology. And you and I talked ad nauseum
Yes,
about this last one,
we did.
actually. So
We
this
did.
was hilarious that this came up because this is something that we enjoy and employ within Exit as just part of what we offer our agents. So I thought this was pretty cool. These guys want an arm and a leg every month to do this. But anyways, it just kind
Oh,
of
okay.
validated what we offer at Exit. So I was just giving a little high five plug to our My Smart Sign technology
Right.
for
So that kind of leads into make sure after this 4th of July that you have all your digits attached, because that smart sign is going to cost you an arm and a leg, outside of exit. So,
That's right. That's right. I
so we've
kind of
got
like
that
I kind
going
of
for
like
us.
that. I kind of like that. And we have an exit open in Hawaii now. So
You do.
Mele Kalikimaka when it's Christmas time. We're not there yet, but that's a little advanced. Merry Christmas to all of our
It is.
on the islands that are going to be conducting real estate now. So
And I won't attempt to say that because I will slaughter it. I can't even pronounce my coffee properly according to my kids that I get. As a matter of fact, my daughter's on the way into the office right now. She called and says, "Dad, you want me to get you a coffee?" I said, "Sure." She already knows what I want to give it. Every single time I go through the drive-through and I order it, I get laughed at and
I
mocked.
noticed that. I was overhearing that. You said, just get me the coffee. Just, hey,
Yes,
just know what it is. Just get me the cup with the magic stuff, with the magic liquid inside that I don't know, like that I slaughter every time.
right, right.
It's kind of funny because up in the Pacific Northwest, coffee's a really big thing, right? And so we have Starbucks, we have Dutch Bros, all these things, right? We survive on our coffee. We're kind of known for that. And I remember the first time when I moved up here, I walk into a Starbucks and I'm standing there in line, and the anxiety I had standing there in line because I'm waiting. I'm like, I'm going to be at the front, and I don't know what are all these strange words like. What do
Yes.
I like? And so I sit there and I ask the barista. I'm like, so what do I've never been in here before. What's your most popular thing? She goes, oh, we sell a lot of mochas. And I was like, okay, that sounds good. And to this day, that's like one of my favorite drinks. But I do have a sweet tooth. But it was kind of funny though, because there's people standing there in line and they're like, yeah, I'll have 2 shots of sugar-free vanilla with this, and then half calf decaf, and then I would like at 132 degrees, and then I want 4 pumps of this. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, so I felt stupid because I'm sitting there, I'm like, can I have some coffee that tastes good? You know what I mean? I felt
Yeah,
so dumb.
I just want something decent. Yeah.
Yeah, and we have certified coffee snobs here in the Northwest. It's a
Oh,
whole.
yeah. My daughter's a coffee snob. I love her to death. Don't get me wrong, but she is a coffee snob. It's got to be a triple, double, spin around, put your hat on backwards, do a cartwheel.
I love it. I love it. I
Yeah.
think, I think
With a
that's cool
stopper.
though, man. I think
Yeah.
that's cool. Well, it's interesting. So a lot of things happening in real estate right now, and we do need a lot of coffee to kind of keep up with the changes because they're coming fast and furious, and the market is really
Uh,
changing a lot right now. So down in your area, we kind of started talking about absorption rates and things like that. We've had some funky things going on up here. We have a lot of buyers backing out, just
oh,
last
yeah.
minute things, just getting cold feet. We've got sellers that are still saying, "Hey, I want top dollar. I'm getting this," and we're saying, "Hey, there's a big disconnect in the market right now." When we talk about disconnects in the market from an aspect of the agent and their clients, what would you say are maybe the top 2 or 3 most important things an agent should be able to disseminate or provide to their clients to help them navigate and be successful when they're listing their home, right?
Okay.
So Chad, I want to list my home. What do you need to tell me about, or what can you tell me about the market that's going to help me have a successful home sale? Because I need to sell. I don't want to, and I'm telling you, my house is worth way more than it is. Um, what do you think are a couple things that we could tell agents, that when you run into a client like that, how to be successful with the listing in terms of getting the listing and selling that listing to help everybody achieve their goal?
Right. So first off, you need to determine if you want the listing. Let's be honest. The worst thing that we can do is have a listing and know it's not going to sell. And we're wasting our time, energy, and resources in marketing a home that's never going to sell. So the first thing is ascertaining whether that property is going to move with those expectations from the owner, right? And I know
Yeah,
that's kind of off the
100%.
wall, but from an agent, I would rather be the second or third agent trying to sell a house than the first one who's got it overpriced and the owners won't budge.
Yeah, because how many times have we seen the second or third agent comes in, price gets lower, and the house is gone in 2 months, and that
Exactly.
first agent did all the heavy lifting in it
Right.
with an unrealistic expectation on the seller side that that first agent kind of allowed to. I don't want I caution to say allowed to happen, but did allow to happen, right?
Right.
Didn't properly articulate maybe what the market was doing or allowed the seller to set the tones. And I think as professionals that's something that we see happen. It's our job to articulate effectively what the market's doing. And if somebody says, "Hey, I disagree with you,"
Exactly.
we're fine to have that disagreement, but that doesn't mean we have to do business together. So that's a great point. Do you
Right.
want that listing? Because you can take a listing and put yourself in a worse off position, right?
You can. And so then the next step is when you're going in to meet with them, I think we've touched base on this before, but it's just basically knowing your numbers, knowing, how many homes are in that market that are available to sell, that are on the market for sale, knowing the condition, knowing the pros of the property, which those are typically very easily to identify, but then there's the cons. And the trick is being able to convince the seller that those cons are going to have a negative impact on their property. I sold a
Yeah.
property a few months back and they backed to a railroad. Literally right out the back door, you'd see the trains go by. Well, that's a negative aspect of the home. And so we priced it accordingly and we were able to get that property moved. But it's just being able to articulate, why you feel that the market is going to either accept or reject the property at any given price point. And there
Yeah.
again, it goes back to that debate talk where you go in there with all your data. And whenever that conversation changes from the data and switches over to the emotional aspect of that home, as an agent, we have to try and get them back to reality per se, and just to get them to understand, look, the market is not what it was like 3 years ago. Houses
Yeah.
are sitting on the market longer. They have to be move-in ready, right? They can't, you can't overprice it and try and set the market in any subdivision. Few years ago, you could go in and you could say, okay, the highest price home in here is let's say 450. Let's go 20,000 over, and it'll go in a week, right?
Yeah.
Then we'll deal with the appraisal when it comes in at that
Yeah.
point.
Right. Yeah.
Right? Yeah, and you'd have backup offers that you could fall back on. So, but this market is not indicative of being able to do that. So,
I
it's
think that house though with the railroad tracks behind it, you could market it kind of uniquely, right? You could market it as, want to live out your Wild West fantasies and jump on a train, chase a train and pretend you're a train robber or you're escaping. No, I'm just
oh,
kidding. I
I
mean,
should have ran a hobo
for
special.
that one person, it's going to be the right house, right?
I should have ran a hobo special, included the
Right.
stick with the
The
blue
Wild
bandana.
West is alive and well right there. Well, you
Yeah,
had an
thanks.
interesting one where you had an RV that had been fenced in concrete block fenced into the backyard. Like you're not
Right.
taking the RV out. They like didn't put the gate in. They just built it into the backyard. So that was kind of funny because we see a lot of interesting things with our listings, right? You're so right on things that impact value. I have some buyers right now, and we're looking at a house, and they really love this one house, but it backs to an industrial area, like flat out lay down yards and a factory right behind it. And I said, well, that's why this house is taking a while to sell, and it's below the value of the other homes. If you take this house on, please know that when you want me to go sell it for you in the future because you're looking at a different house or you want to move up house or whatever it may be, or a move down house, whatever, that we're gonna struggle with this same thing, that the value is going to kind of maybe have some issues and we're going to have some things we're going to struggle with. And so I think it's important, like you said, that they understand that. And this house has been sitting so long, so clearly the sellers had some unrealistic expectations. When I called the agent, they're just like, make us an offer. They're practically begging for an offer, and you don't want to be in that position, right? And you know, we have one of our agents in our office went for sale by owner, and that they're at like 1.4 million. And she asked me to help her run comps, and I was like, I said, maybe a million if they're lucky. And she's like, wow, that's a big difference. And I said, well, sometimes people feel that their house. So we called and talked to that for sale by owner. I was on the call with her, and she's like, they are definitely like, our house is amazing, this and that. And I said, well, you know what? Our prices are kind of different from where you're at right now. Would you be okay with us engaging with an appraiser? So we actually went and hired an appraiser. The
Hmm.
appraiser came in and said 895 to 990.
Right.
What we thought, and
Right.
we gave that to them, and their jaws almost hit the floor, but they're still not interested in listing unless we're willing to list it for 1.3.
Right.
And I told them, I said, I time is valuable. The market's changing, and I would hate to lead them on in that situation. So that's a listing, like you said, where we're going to kind of just pass on that one because I don't want to be the agent to get a reputation either for putting houses on the market that are severely overpriced because people sit there and go, "Oh, agents within our business, right?" It
Right.
that
Right.
that agent takes everything up there and it's always overpriced, right?
Right. Yeah, and not only that, is agents can sniff out a home that's overpriced as well. One strategy that I tell my agents to utilize in that scenario is take this home seller and do some home tours. Okay, so you feel that your home is
Yeah,
worth 1.4. Here's other properties that are on the market and that either aren't selling or are selling, and just take them through a home tour of the houses in that
yeah,
community. And how do you compare to them? Okay, so and then whenever you get done, you start making an evaluation of, okay, what are the differences between the two and how does that financially impact the value of the home? And that's one strategy that can be utilized whenever individuals have unrealistic expectations that rose bush in the front yard is not going to add $500,000 to the home.
yeah, right. No
Because
doubt, no
my mother
doubt.
always called that the $1 million rose bush growing up, right?
I
Oh
love it.
yeah.
It's so true, though. I love
Uh,
it. I love it. Hey, did your coffee arrive yet?
no, not yet. No.
You know what? You're gonna have to talk to your delivery person there. It's
Oh yeah.
his daughter, by the way, so we're gonna be nice. We'll be nice, but
Oh, you can be nice.
we can talk to her about that. So,
Yeah.
do you ever sometimes sit there in a listing? Have you ever been in a listing presentation? I'm gonna divert to a little bit of goofiness now. Have you
Okay.
ever been in a listing presentation? You're in the middle of a sentence and you totally forget what you were saying?
Oh yeah, all the time. Honestly, it does. With my age, as I've been aging, my memory is not the best. My mind, I'll be thinking 3 steps ahead, and then I'll forget what step I was on.
Well, mind is a terrible thing to waste. There's also that other saying that sorry, I'm going off on a tangent now. This is a
That's
steep.
all right. That's all
Have
right.
you ever heard the saying, I'd rather have a bottle in front of me than a frontal lobotomy?
No, I haven't. I
That's for those really rough days. That's
well,
for those really rough days. No, that was actually
there's some logic to that. Let's be
there was a
honest.
song that I think that some punk rock band put out or somebody put out, and that was the name of the song, I'm pretty sure. Anyways, don't quote me on that. Go do your own research. You can figure it out. But
Oh, that's hilarious. 'Cause That's one of my phrases is don't quote me on this. If I was a betting man, this would happen, but don't quote me on this. I just had that scenario play out yesterday. Was had a closing. I'd spoken with them at our final walkthrough and it said, "Hey, everything's in order. When do you think we'll close?" And here in Arizona, we never know what time of the day we're going to close.
right,
So
yeah.
the title company's got everything they need. The lender has everything they need. If I was a betting man, I'd say we close by noon. But don't quote me on that. I get a text at 11:30 saying, "Hey, have we closed yet?" And I had updated them twice previously.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I confirmed that we had the title company receive the funds. They've released it to record. It's just taking a while to record. And, I'm not sure why. I know it's the last day it's the last day of the month. But, the recorder's office is probably backed up. Well, you said we'd be closed by noon. I also said I was a betting man and not to quote me on that. Right. And those are issues beyond my control. if it was up to me, we would have closed on this, 3 weeks ago.
Oh, heck yeah, right? You're like, dude, we would have done this a long time ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny how people what they like yeah, what they hear and what they think and and all that good stuff.
And what they remember.
Yeah.
And and I get it. They're excited about closing on the house. They have a laundry list of individuals that are coming out, landscapers. They've got to get
Yeah.
internet up
Well, it's
and
an exciting
running.
day, right?
Oh,
They're
it
excited
is.
to move in and get into their new space and make it their own. It's
Yeah.
all the cool
Yeah,
things.
so I totally get it. It's just one of those, some sayings that I utilize, old time sayings that sparked a memory for me. So
Well, you know what? I think we're kind of getting to our wrap up time here a little bit.
and the funny thing is, we touched zero on what we initially wanted to talk about.
Yeah, we were going to talk about the big NAR tax wins. There's so many benefits that just got passed
Yeah,
to our clients out there, both on the buy and sell side. So
yeah,
we're going to jump into that next time, but I'll tell you, folks, there's some really cool tax things there. There's some great stuff for creating generational wealth with some of the inheritance
yeah,
and transfer taxes that are being put into place and protected. There's some great stuff there for first-time home buyers. There's some additional uh, protections, I guess, that have been built in for all different buyers that are going to help them. The child tax credit is getting increased to 2,200, and it's going to increase a little bit each year for inflate based upon inflation indexes.
right, right.
There's a baby bond that now is getting added, $1,000 the government will give to your newly born child after this bill has been passed, that they can go ahead and cash out into adulthood to either use for towards starting a business or whatever it is that they want, educational or buying a house. So there's some really cool stuff, and we're going to have to jump into those details that now that that's all been put out there because when we talk about people saying, is it a great time to buy real estate? I've always, every time I've had somebody ask me, is it a good time to buy real estate? And they don't buy and they come to me 3 to 5 years later,
Right.
they wish they would have bought real estate, regardless of what's happening with interest
Yeah,
rates in the market.
yeah.
So we're going to jump into a lot of that, I think, next time. We kind of talked a little bit about some listing stuff this time.
We got a
But
little sidetracked. I apologize. That's my
oh,
fault.
that's okay. You haven't had your coffee yet.
I
I
haven't.
understand that. I tell people it's not an addiction, it's a choice. And so
That's right. That's right.
so, but right on. So, hey, everybody, subscribe, like, follow, get notifications, give us some comments. We're out there in the real world. I did open house this weekend after the podcast. I thought there was going to be a line of people waiting for my autograph. That didn't happen. So, but I had very good
They
open
were,
houses.
they were all outside my house, Steve. I apologize.
I like it. I like
Yeah,
it.
there was a line. Had nothing to do with my other daughter selling baked goods, and then they were coming to pick
Oh
these baked goods up.
gosh,
Had
dude,
nothing to
her
do with
baked
that.
goods look amazing. Like I'm gonna have
Yes,
some chipped up
phenomenal.
here. They look phenomenal. Yeah, you guys gonna have to check that out. That's a whole nother thing. Maybe we'll do an entire episode on baked goods and have her on as a guest and ask her
Great.
algorithm and how she plans her business and how she executes. Because no matter what industry you're in, sales are sales, and there's always some good common foundational procedures that are have to be followed to be successful. So
That's right. That's right.
right on.
So
All right,
everyone,
well, hey,
have
everybody.
a safe 4th of July.
Absolutely.
Stay out of the emergency room if you can.
Yes, absolutely. Do
And,
that.
and so we'll catch up with you next Friday.
Sounds good. Thank you,
All right. Take
Chad.
care, guys.
See ya.
Thank you, Steve. Take care.